Pressing on. All minor stress is going gone. Pressing on. I'm pressing on.
At long last, my loyal subscribers, it's finally here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the one and only Impulse Kid 86, and this is my long-awaited review for Dragon Ball Z Infinite World, the final game in developer Dimps' Dragon Ball Z Budokai series for the PlayStation 2. I just want to kick things off by saying that even though the fact that it's on the PS2 would surely be disappointing for anyone who no longer owns that console, I give Dimps credit for realizing that not everyone in the world owns an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3. If I were wearing a hat right now, I'd gladly tip it to them, but unfortunately I'm not. So I'll simply say, kudos, Dimps. Kudos. Infinite World introduces a brand new single-player campaign called the Dragon Mission Mode, which sees players guiding an avatar of Goku across a series of maps and constantly moving from one mission to the next. While the points of interest mostly consist of objective-based fisticuffs ranging from simply defeating the enemy to attacking using only key energy attacks, the game does mix things up and allow you to step into the shoes of various heroes and villains. This is done in two ways, the first of which is what I've come to call checkpoint runs. With the Dragon Radar fittingly serving as an actual radar that can be summoned with the triangle button, players will have to race against time and run through all of the checkpoints as quickly as possible, collecting Dragon Balls and Zenny along the way that can be used to purchase customization items and other such unlockables. The second divergence plays out in the form of minigames such as training with Vegeta in the hyperbolic time chamber or taking control of Frieza and blasting Piccolo out of the sky. A little change is always nice, and the Dragon Mission Mode really helps to break up what could easily get monotonous and frustrating, particularly given how hard the game can get, but I'll get to that a little later on. Aside from the standard training and dueling modes, the game has another single-player mode similar to Budokai 3's Dragon Arena called Fighter's Road, which is largely the same as the Dragon Mission Mode, with the only notable differences being the removal of the checkpoint runs and the fact that the opponents are completely random. As far as the character count is concerned, there are only 40 to pick from this time around. The initially playable characters from Budokai 3 all return and are joined by a sparse handful of new faces, including Janemba from the DBZ mini-movie Fusion Reborn, Pikkon, Goku's final opponent in the Otherworld tournament, Videl's superhero alter ego, the Great Saiyan Girl, as well as some Dragon Ball GT characters, including Kid Goku, Vegeta, Pan, Baby, and Super Android 17. The most basic controls are very much the same as the previous Budokai games, with punching, kicking, blocking, and firing ki blasts, all respectively done with the square, triangle, X, and circle buttons. However, in its attempts to live up to its tagline and be the best of the Budokai games, Infinite World incorporates gameplay elements from the Shin Budokai games on PSP and Burst Limit on the new-gen systems, and as such, some changes have been made. You can recharge your ki by pressing L1 or perform a flying dash with R1, which can lead into a smash attack with a press of the R2 button. Furthermore, the L2 button initiates the Aura Spark ability, which effectively replaces and functions much the same as the Hyper Mode in Budokai 3, making your attacks much more powerful while whittling away at your ki at the same time. Special attacks and ultimate finishes are also performed by pressing circle and any of the directional buttons, a la Shin Budokai and Burst Limit. Transforming also takes its cues from the Shin Budokai games and can be activated by pressing down on the D-pad and circle at the same time. The final change is the addition of the attack throw, a variation on the standard throw triggered by pressing X and circle simultaneously. Graphically, Infinite World is essentially unchanged from Budokai 3, although it's worth noting that excluding Burst Limit, this is the first game to feature fully rendered 3D cutscenes since the original Budokai game. These cutscenes, peppered sparingly throughout the game, are quite a treat for the eyes, despite obvious flaws such as the poor lip sync when the English dub track is active. I realise that this is a game based off an anime, of course, but even so, it can get a little ridiculous. Just watch, and you'll see what I mean.
My only objective is you. I challenge you, Kakarot! Vegeta, in order to get me to fight you, you've become Babidi's slave! Is it slavery if you get what you want? Forget Majin Buu! I am a Saiyan Prince! You're a joke, yet I've watched you surpass me in strength! My destiny thrown to the wayside! You even saved my life as if I were a child! You have stolen my honor! And now, your debt must be paid! I understand, Vegeta. So that's how you feel. So be it. Let's finish this.
Infinite World's soundtrack also holds true to the aforementioned tagline and contains a healthy mixture of background tracks recycled from all of the Budokai games, including Burst Limit, as well as a small selection of brand new tracks and even some remixes from the original Japanese dub of the series. Hironobu Kageyama returns once again with a brand new vocal opening theme, and although this isn't a first-time event for Australian gamers such as myself, I do believe that it's a first for the North American market, as they previously had excised the vocal themes and instead opted for the instrumentals. Unfortunately, the vocal performances during the cutscenes aren't really that great. They aren't outright horrible, don't get me wrong, but they're not mind-blowingly awesome either. I said once before in my review for Budokai Tenkaichi 2 that Sean Schemmel seems to consistently sound like he's putting effort into his role as Goku no matter how many times he's voiced the character, and I stand by that. The other English actors do respectable jobs as well, but in my honest opinion, anyone who passes out in the recording booth from pushing himself a little too hard deserves some major points. Remember how I said that the game can get so hard as to be frustrating? Well, I'm not kidding when I say that the normal setting in Infinite World feels like the Z, or very hard setting, in the other Budokai games. Suffice to say that if you're expecting this to be as easy as the other Budokai games, you'll be in for quite a shock and will most likely wind up getting your ass served to you on a silver platter with all the trimmings. Although I was initially quite put off by the drastic upsurge in difficulty, I quickly adjusted and found that it wasn't without its upsides, as it placed greater emphasis on customization. Now, anyone who's seen my previous DBZ game reviews knows that I don't normally touch upon customization in these games because, as I've said in the past, I've never found much of a use for it. In Infinite World, however, customization is a necessity, and the system has undergone quite a few drastic changes. First and foremost is that the breakthrough capsules from the previous Budokai games are now gone, and increasing the strength of a special attack has been made easier as well. For example, instead of equipping the Kamehameha capsule 3 times, and thus wasting 3 item slots as was done in previous games, you can buy a single skill capsule and upgrade it as necessary. If you ever run out of item slots, don't worry, because you can buy extras in Barbari's shop. Evil wizard to legitimate businessman. Guess the poor schmuck's gotta make a living somehow. Aside from the frightening increase in difficulty, there are a couple of other negatives worth mentioning. The first is a distinct lack of a tournament mode. While I understand the removal of this feature in Burst Limit and the Shin Budokai games, particularly considering that the former was a reboot of sorts for the current generation of consoles, it is rather jarring to see it suddenly disappear from the PS2 Budokai series, and it really takes away from the multiplayer value. I also find it really odd that the Dragon Balls can be picked up throughout the various checkpoint run levels in the Dragon Mission mode, and I only say that simply because that same mode includes an entire mission dedicated to gathering the Dragon Balls one by one. As Julian Grabowski from the Daizenshuu EX website would say, it's redundantly redundant. In closing, I'm not going to say that Infinite World wasn't fun, but the whole package struck me as being the Dragon Ball Z equivalent of an MMO expansion pack. I do appreciate the effort that went into this in regards to the single-player experience, but otherwise, if you own or have played Budokai 3, you're really not missing out on much. To be brutally honest, I think the only reason to buy this would simply be for the sake of owning the entire PS2 Budokai series.
Make